Welcome back, everyone, to a weekly episode of the Football Tailgaters, where we go over hot topics in the NFL. As always, we have Yams, who's a Jets fan, Andy, who's an unbiased NFL fan, and myself, Aaron, the Cowboys fan in this group. So we're going to go over some quick topics. Obviously, our weekly biggest disappointments and surprise. Also, one main topic, contender pretenders with some of the main teams in the NFL currently. And as always, ending off with fantasy talk and the Week 7 picks for Andy. So let's start off with our weekly biggest disappointment, guys. What is that for Week 7? Sorry, for Week 6.
I think I'm going to continue with the Minnesota Vikings. They still continue to disappoint me after having such a high season last year, and now we're in Week 6, and they are still continuing to disappoint. Kirk Cousins is not showing the spark that he had last year. I know he didn't have Justin Jefferson, but things are not going in the right direction for the Vikings.
For Week 6, the biggest disappointment was the San Francisco 49ers defense losing to the backup quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. They should be the number one team in my eyes for the NFL, and they just were very lost in that game, and Purdy showed his showed some true colors of his.
I would also jump on to the 49ers losing, mainly because, they lost to a backup quarterback with what's considered a top defense in the NFL. And, you compare it to a lot of the noise that the Cowboys had whenever they had their defense exposed, right? So I think it's fair to say that San Francisco was also exposed to by a backup quarterback with the Cleveland Browns, PJ Walker, right? And on the offensive side with Brock Purdy, I would say, you can criticize him a bit. He was a little bit, I would say, more normal, not so like, Superman, unbeatable. He did lose Christian McCaffrey. That's the one big point that I will say that I could give him as an excuse. Other than that, it was a pretty disappointing outing for the San Francisco 49ers, and now there's no NFL team that's undefeated right now, so that's pretty crazy to look at. Let's go over our weekly biggest surprise for Week 6.
I guess I'll continue. That is my surprise, is that the 49ers and the Eagles both lost their undefeated status on the same week. It says more about the Cleveland Browns defense being able to outperform Kyle Shanahan, and that would be my surprise.
A really big surprise was the Philadelphia Eagles offense having 4 turnovers with 3 interceptions and 1 fumble. I know the Jets defense is elite, but come on, if you're going to be trying to go for that Super Bowl and we're getting close to halfway of the NFL season, you cannot have 4 turnovers. They lost the turnover game.
Yeah, so how about the top dogs in the NFC, right? San Francisco and Philadelphia. Biggest surprise was obviously them losing to, I would say the Philadelphia loss isn't as a surprise, mainly because of the Jets defense. But you're looking on the defensive side for Philadelphia, there's a lot of question marks there. And I don't want to jump into the next topic because that's something that's going to be in the mix there. And for San Francisco, right, I mean, nobody saw this coming, right? But it's the NFL. Again, anything happens, so it was a pretty big surprise. And I kind of saw a lot of the top teams that are above 500 struggle against teams that aren't even contenders, right? You saw Buffalo struggling a little bit with New York, right? So it's just kind of like, what's going on? It's mid-season right here. Bye weeks are starting off. There's some teams that are headed off over across seas and stuff like that. So there's something to adjust. Like, for example, Jacksonville just had their 2 weeks in a row or something like that. And they're looking pretty solid now that they're back. So something to keep an eye on for them. But yeah, I mean, overall, the top dogs didn't look so hot in this week. So let's go over contenders and pretenders as our main topic. And we're going to go over 4 teams, and we're going to name each one if they're either contender or pretender. So let's start off on the NFC side. We got the Philadelphia Eagles. Are they pretenders or contenders?
The Philadelphia Eagles are right now pretenders because it looks like Jalen Hurts has not been as good as he was last season. It looks like defensive coordinators had the offseason to get ready for him. And we saw the Jets. They were able to find the loopholes of how to stop him and that big-time offense. So I'm going to say the Eagles are pretenders at this point.
I think I'm the only one that's going to be high on the Jets. But I'm not going to put the panic button yet on Philadelphia. They're still contenders. Yes, there is some regression, and that's going to happen. That's natural. But I don't think that this is going to cement them as a pretender yet.
I think they are a hairline away from pretenders, mainly because, again, that secondary on the defense for Philadelphia isn't their strongest part of the defense. It's the defensive line. And now you see them, they got Julio Jones on the offensive side, a veteran wide receiver as a pickup. Is that because of what happened in New York, right? So who knows? But I don't know. It's kind of, I need to see more from them. And they didn't get to do their little tush push, what do you call it, the brotherly shove or anything like that. So they didn't get to take advantage of that at all. New York Jets, they put on a good show. So it's getting there to the point to where they're still contenders, right? Only because they still got a great team going on and they're getting Jalen Carter back. So they should be fine. So let's move on to the 49ers. Are they pretenders or contenders?
I think they're still contenders. Yes, they did lose to the Cleveland Browns defense, but I think Cleveland Browns defense is really good, actually. So Brock Purdy did struggle once, his weapons stepped out, CMC and Deebo Samuel. So, yeah, he's not Tom Brady. Okay, he was brought down back to earth, but he's still a good quarterback, and I think they'll bounce back after this one.
They got decimated by injuries. They lost their biggest offensive weapon with Christian McCaffrey out and Deebo Samuel, their other big-time weapon, out as well. So the game was put in a little bit on Brock Purdy's shoulders to be able to overcome those injuries and ensure that he can't. I'm going to still say that they're contenders because it's just right now they just got injured, but it doesn't seem like it's so serious. So I'm still going to put them on top of the NFCS for the moment.
I would also put them as contenders, but it's looking kind of tough, at least in the NFC, when you're trying to put them up against, again, the Philadelphia Eagles. You got the Detroit Lions looking legit, right? You still got the Cowboys that are somewhat in there, right? So those are kind of like the main threats aside from that. And their schedule looks pretty favorable. They did lose again Christian McCaffrey. So with the loss of Christian McCaffrey, it's definitely going to put a lot more pressure on Brock Purdy. And in the weeks to come, we're going to be able to see if they're legit contenders. This might be something where it's kind of a facade right now. They're looking really strong, and the defense is really going to have to put more on the table to help out Brock Purdy, possibly. Because Brock Purdy, I think he's a good quarterback, but this is his chance to really cement his, I guess, legitness as a number one quarterback and a top quarterback in the NFL. Let's move on over to the AFC side with contenders and pretenders. Let's start with the Dolphins. Are the Dolphins pretenders or contenders?
I'm going to classify them as contenders. They did go down 14-0 against the Carolina Panthers, but there's no denying how fast this offense is and the creativeness that Mike McDaniels brings to this team. So they're contenders. I don't see them far from pretenders at this time.
I agree. They had some struggles with the Carolina Panthers, but on the second half, they just showed how explosive and the Mike McDaniels way of how to change things in halftime in order to put them in the best position to win. So, of course, they are actually the best team in the AFC in my eyes. So, of course, contenders.
I would say they are the best team in the AFC as of now. So, for that reason, I would put them as contenders. But the Bills aren't that far behind. They're the ones who gave them the loss. Their only loss, I should say, in their record. So they're 5-1, and it came to the Bills 48-20, and they did look kind of shaky there. But overall, if you look at all the other games, right, against the Chargers, Patriots, Broncos, Giants, Panthers, you look at those teams and you look, oh, they're not super serious, right? They're not like a true competitor. But then again, you look at week 6 and you look at all these top teams that were struggling. The Miami Dolphins struggled against the Panthers. Again, I said earlier, the Bills struggled against the Giants. So, and then obviously San Francisco lost against the Browns. You can never know with the NFL, but as of now, they are contenders, and they look really strong with Tua healthy. So as long as he's healthy, they're completely fine. Let's do the last team. So this is the second AFC team here. Are The Chiefs pretenders or contenders?
The Super Bowl championships, in my eyes, are still contenders. Patrick Mahomes has not had the best start, but the defense is showing to continue to get better. They are slow, and that's how the Chiefs are. They end up to get hot later on in the year, so I would classify them as contenders.
You cannot put the Chiefs as pretenders. They are back to. They have 2 Super Bowls. They are the Super Bowl champions. I know that there is this Super Bowl hangover for many teams, but Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, there are elite status. It's like the second coming of the Patriots. I don't want any hate on it right now, but it looks like Patrick Mahomes is just a new type of quarterback that is really, really hard to find now. So I believe the Chiefs are just going to figure out things to be able to be a really big contender in the NFL in the season.
They're definitely contenders, although you can argue that maybe the schedule and their wide receiver core isn't as good as it used to be, right? Hill left and all that kind of stuff. But they still managed to do great things, and that's a lot. A lot has to do because of Patrick Mahomes. That guy has generational talent, and it's hard to find a quarterback like that. And somehow, with all the struggles that they've encountered, with Chris Jones not being there in the first 2 weeks or something like that, they don't really have until right now. They got some wide receivers stepping up. Maybe Rice looks to be the main guy there, right? But obviously, number one is Travis Kelce, and then Pacheco's looking great. Overall, that team looks pretty solid, and they're 5-1 for a reason. And the division they're in right now, it's super easy to win that, and this is a great time for them to keep that dynasty strong and going. So, lastly, we're going to go over the last 2 things. As usual, we have our fantasy updates and our Week 7 picks from Andy. So let's start with the fantasy updates. What do you have for us?
For Week 7, we do have just a bunch of running backs available in the league since there's a lot of decimated running backs and injuries. So we'll start with Jordan Mason, the running back for the 49ers. Christian McCaffrey is going to be probably out for this, or not probably, maybe. It's a big maybe, this upcoming Monday Night Football. So Jordan Mason, we have seen him be the second running back, so he is a pickup and for this week. Next, we have Kareem Hunt, the running back for the Browns. We've been seeing the Browns giving him more of a load, having as a pass catcher, and they just have a lot of confidence in Kareem Hunt. So I believe he's a big pickup this week as well. Next up, we have Zach Evans, the running back for the LA Rams. Now that Williams, their top running back, is out, Zach Evans is going to be the next step up, and the Los Angeles Rams have been heavy running in this season. So I will pick up Zach Evans as the running back. And lastly, I have Craig Reynolds, the running back of the Lions. A lot of people are not going to be picking him up, but we do have Ty Montgomery out, and as well as as well as maybe Gibbs is not going to be playing as well. So the next man up is Craig Reynolds. He might not be playing; it might be Gibbs, but just in case, I would pick him up as the Detroit Lions do rely on that running game.
You call him? Did you say Ty Montgomery? Because it's David.
David Montgomery. Ty Montgomery. Blast from the past. I'm sorry, David Montgomery.
I pretty much agree with those. Yeah, I mean, there's no other one to me that really sticks out. Those are pretty good.
Yeah, the running backs right now are just having just an injury.
This is the time.
Yeah, exactly.
This is around the time where it would kind of happen, sadly.
But this is the time that fantasy, the people that are struggling in fantasy, to be able to make these moves and just figure out which running back is better against whoever they're playing, and then the opponent that the 49ers are going to face, the Minnesota Vikings on this Monday night. So that should be a good game for the running back, and in this case for the 49ers. And, the Rams, I mean, you saw how Williams is just getting points and points and points. They use him a lot. So I would definitely get the Rams running back, Zach Evans. So, yeah, this is a time that your season is not over if you just pick players that are just come out that are just injured or they're not playing well. Just figure it out.
Yeah, this is the time. Why don't you go over also last but not least, Week 7 picks. I know this is especially, I think we all know, is pretty obvious. Sunday Night Football, but
boom.
See what else you have.
Yeah, let's start with the Jacksonville Jaguars against the New Orleans Saints Thursday Night Football. This is going to be a good game because Derek Carr has been playing really well for the Saints. We saw him have a little bit of a struggle in the sidelines and not really happy with how things have been going. So Jaguars, they are up and down. It's a roller coaster with them, but I'm picking the Jaguars in this case. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Saints took it. The Las Vegas Raiders against the Chicago Bears. For me, this is going to be an easier pick for me just because Justin Fields is doubtful for this week. He is probably going to be out, and the Raiders, they just are going to be able to win. Even though the Chicago Bears are probably going to have it, they're going to be close to it. They're going to make it a competitive game, but the Raiders, since they're just not as injured as the Bears, I would be taking the Raiders. Next up, we have the Cardinals against the Seahawks, division rivalry game. Dobbs has been playing really well as a backup quarterback for Kyler Murray, even though Kyler Murray is going to start practicing pretty soon. The Seahawks, I'm a huge Pete Carroll fan. The defense is going to step up, so I'm going to be taking the Seahawks to beat the Cardinals. Another big divisional game, we have the Chargers against the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, the Swifties are going to overcome and beat the Chargers. The Chargers had a disappointing loss against the Cowboys. The offense of the Cowboys didn't do so well, and it's the defense that stepped up. So they need to figure things out. I'm not a huge fan of the Chargers coach, so I'm going to be taking the Chiefs. The biggest game of Sunday would be the Dolphins against the Eagles. A lot of people say that this is the biggest team of the NFC against the biggest team of the AFC. I'm going to be taking the Philadelphia Eagles in this case. The Dolphins, they did struggle against the Buffalo Bills, and I do see the Eagles have a similar type of team as the Buffalo Bills. So I foresee a huge game from Jalen Hurts. I want to pick the Eagles for this one.
Possibly Super Bowl preview. Who knows?
Possibly.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. That would be cool.
I wouldn't be surprised. Lastly, Monday Night Football, the 49ers against the Vikings. Now, the 49ers did lose a big surprising game against the Cleveland Browns. So if they do not get their weapons back for Purdy, I'm still going to think that Shanahan is going to have this team ready to beat the Vikings. The Vikings that have been a big-time disappointment this season. They might be trading Kirk Cousins. I really doubt it. It looks like the Minnesota Vikings want to keep him around for the future, but you never know. And the NFL is full of surprises. But for this game, I'm picking the 49ers.
That might be a low-scoring game. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Because they're missing Justin Jefferson with the Vikings, and which is the top option. And then on the other side, they're missing their top option, Christian McCaffrey. So either I feel like San Francisco is going to be able to adapt because, again, Shanahan has just been able to prove that he's a great coach. And he's got a lot more weapons than just McCaffrey, like Ayuk and Kittle, right?
Right,
so,
right.
And Debo. Can't forget about Debo.
No, I just have so much respect for Shanahan that that loss for him was a total surprise. I mean, he wasn't foreseeing those injuries to happen to his big time weapons. But now in this case, they'll be ready against the Vikings.
If they lose this one, though, would that make them pretenders at this point?
Depends on the manner that they lose. Yeah. If
a 2-score game.
If it's a 2-score game, I wouldn't call them as. It's just any given Sunday. Every NFL team, badly as they are, there's still the big time pros on the other side, whoever they're playing against. So right. I wouldn't call them pretenders at this point. Look at the NFC.
Yep.
There's nobody outstanding there. So no, I would still continue saying they're contenders.
The NFL is pretty unpredictable, but for week 7, we're going to see there's going to be more surprises that we don't see coming possibly, right? It's the NFL. Anything could happen.
Yep.
But, that's going to conclude this episode, this short episode. Rush it through, but we made it. So thank you guys for listening to the very end, and we'd love to see you guys giving your opinion with us on our social media, which is football_tailgaters on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Thank you guys again for listening, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.